Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the most violent team wins on Saturday in Tucson as the Red Raiders have now annexed the state of Arizona. Welcome to West Texas.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan, back for a reaction episode of Locked On Texas Tech following the Red Raiders' road win. Let me double check these notes. Yes, road win away from Jones Stadium over the Arizona Wildcats. 28-22, Texas Tech improves to 3-0 in league play. Only your fifth 3-0 start in the Big 12 in program history. And it took some heavy lifting, Chris, as the Red Raiders got off to a great start, really had a dream of a first half, got a response like you knew you would from Arizona, but you find a way to get it done at the end of the night. And we got a lot to dive into, but I don't think there's any way around the fact that the defense is taking the headlines away from this one. That was great to see. And, man, it was really fun late into the night in the 806, watching that one go down.
Yeah, if there's a state of Arizona title belt floating around out there, somebody needs to hand that to Joey McGuire because he owns that state, at least this year. But yeah, as a great Arizona State alum texted me late. Well, you know what? Early this morning. No pity for the kitty. So the Wildcats go down. Yeah. I mean, they're not. I think we've said that these are not all going to be pretty. I think this is just the way it's going to be, and I hope that people out there, there's plenty to pick at and like get frustrated with or whatever, but the results here are you're continuing to find ways, and that's what Joey's kind of just talked about, man. Find a way. There was some beautiful moments early this morning. There was some struggle early this morning, but man, all's well that ends well, and 3-0 never looked so good. And credit to Tim's group. I thought, like in a nutshell, I thought the last 2 or 3 minutes of the first half was beautiful for the offense. I mean, they were aggressive. Kenny Perry even was throwing up some signs there with the 2-point conversion, going, "Don't forget about me, don't forget." and he okey-doked him a little bit, and that kind of altered the game in some sorts. But just being backed up on your end of the field and then just like deciding, screw it, we're coming out firing, and they went deep and all that. But I think in a nutshell, that's what's fun about this win is that I think Jacob Rodriguez said it after the game. And he deflected so much of, it's like he's preaching his coach's message about coaches tries to tell us to go 1-0 each day, each week. That's what we try to do. And he's like, man, my teammates put me in a good spot. Man, on and on, just deflect. But, he made the comment, hey, the offense has kind of carried us these last couple of weeks. It was nice to be a big part of this one. And they were a huge part, and it wasn't pretty at times, but the game plan, it was kind of a pick your poison, and they chose to drink the red pill, not the blue pill, or the green bottle, not the blue bottle, whatever. Because they, the way they set it up, they were just kind of daring Arizona to run it a little bit, and there was some success there, but it never broke your back. And I just thought you tried to play coverage, and Fafita and McMillan and Burnett and the like, they're really good. That's all there is to it. But I think you did enough, and it was just fun because you kept sending that defense out there, and it wasn't pretty, especially in the second half. And it's like you can't ask much more of them than what they've given you. And guys are rotating in and out. Guys are getting hurt. You don't have plenty of guys coming into the game that weren't even in Tucson. But Joey's talked a lot about Hagler and Hearns back in '85. He's talked a lot of boxing and like that punch on that football by Jacob Rodriguez with McMillan is, if you go on to do really special things this year and you've put yourself in a position to do that, that play right there is one that we need to remember, because that totally changed it. And that was good for him, because he's a dude. We had talked about him being a dude, and he played like it last night and this morning.
Yeah, no doubt. 13 tackles to lead the team, had a sack, had a tip ball that went to Quincy Ledet, which was one of the highlight plays of the ball game. Got to see not only a big man interception return with some yards after the catch, but a hurdle was just a nice chubby cherry on top. Of course, had the forced fumble that you're alluding to there. I thought it was probably Jacob Rodriguez's best game as a Red Raider, and that was a lot of fun to watch. And, people may say, well, hey, it wasn't pretty here or there, but I don't really share in that sentiment, because I saw a lot of beautiful things, namely time and time again, whenever Arizona was getting into the Texas Tech half of the field, you were holding them to 3. Got into the end zone one time, but otherwise, as you go into Red Raider territory, field goal attempt after field goal attempt after field goal attempt, 5 of 6 in that regard, one big miss. You had 2 turnovers in that category. I mean, it was really a sight to behold as far as Texas Tech's defense being able to limit them to 3 instead of 6. Of course, we love zeros as well, but 3s are just fine, especially when you were able to put some points on the board yourself early offensively. I did have a suspicion, boys, we're going to need to score in the second half, and I was proven right. That's some expert analysis there for you. We did need more points, but you were able to find them. And Chris, aside from these extremely uncharacteristic Taj Brooks fumbles, I mean, there's going to be a wider margin there for Texas Tech. Obviously, that's not the way the game goes, ifs, ands, or buts, and the like. But aside from that out-of-character action there from Taj, and he eventually redeems himself with that 30-yard touchdown run, which, by the way, the formation there, the offensive line, I mean, I finally got one of those long sought-after trucks or holes you could drive a truck through, and that was a thing of beauty as well whenever he finally did take it to the end zone. But I don't, the style points aspect, the beauty of the game aspect, it's freaking football. I mean, it's a fight, and you're going to get bloodied here or there. I mean, that's been the message all along. You got to stay in the fight. And I thought the Texas Tech did that. We knew Arizona was going to respond, as I've already said here today. And you responded to their response. You kept your foot in the tire and all the other boxing cliches we've said so many times. Coach McGuire had to be really proud to see that type of mettle shown from his team.
You learn a lot about your team and what they are, and it's it took a little bit of everybody. I mean, like just to speak to that point, Kelby Volson recovers the onside kick. It's the only play. It's the only play he played in the entire game on the hands team. But I will tell you, our favorite first lady was next to me again on the field, and when Taj poked that thing in the end zone, she looked at me and then looked at her little carry-on bag. Run the damn ball, and we smiled and hugged and high-fived and everything. I was really happy for Taj specifically, because that's not who he is, but those fumbles were potentially going to be really costly, and that was going to be a huge storyline. And I mean, heck, you're giving it to your best player. It just, Arizona made a good play a couple of times. This is not what he does, but you just thought, oh man, like that's a rough way if this doesn't go well to leave here. But I was thrilled for him that he got to finish it the right way, because this game was going to be about each team's best players, and I thought your best player was better than theirs, and for a time it didn't appear that way, because your best player or one of had made a mistake or two with the fumbles, but thanks to Jacob Rodriguez, old McMillan had one too, but you kept him out of the end zone, and you're rotating corners on him, and you're just playing, you're scheming it up, trying to drop guys and trying to spy Fafita and all these things. But I think to say that Joey was proud is an understatement. He told me, he says to me after the game, he's like, I thank God I got Dr. Phi down on the sideline, who's my doctor as well. And he's like, because my cardiologist, he can get me back going if my heart can't take this anymore. But he's just like, Chris, I hope you're good to go, man, because it's just how it's going to be. And everybody is so similar in this league, and we knew this, and it's playing out this way. Beat up on each other, but if you can keep winning these one-score games. Heck, I don't care if everybody is similar as long as you keep figuring out a way to get it done from A to B. And so far, because we said this last week, now you are 6-1 in your last 7 Big 12 games, and all 6 of those wins are now one-score games. That's not just coincidence. You're starting to figure that out. You're starting to make a habit of that. And these are the hardest to win. But Joey keeps saying,
first, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And they're not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which make it the best place to find the right hire. Gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive for you. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates to choose from. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within only 24 hours. That's lightning fast. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier as well. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker, plus more effective. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today. Terms and conditions apply.
But Joey keeps saying we thrive in these settings, and it's all the analogies you just mentioned. But because I hear Taj and Jacob after the game, and that's when you know you've got your team in the palm of your hand. When they start preaching your messages, 1-0 each week, coach preaches to us what's next when things aren't going well. What's next? The previous play has no bearing on the next one. And when your 2 best players or 2 of your leaders and 2 of the guys that got you to where you wanted to get in Tucson, when they are preaching that and really taking all that in, boy, you've got culture, you've got all the stuff, and it's I'm just thrilled for that staff, those kids. It was fun because these road wins, man, they're not easy to get. And Houston went and got one this weekend. I think West Virginia went and got a big one this weekend, and Stillwater. Baylor looked really good out of the gate in Ames, and then they kind of fell apart, but it was kind of a road team kind of weekend. But you're going to have to if you want to get to where you want to go, there's no alternative. You have to mix some of these in and then hold serve at home. And this was a start for sure.
I mean, some programs have the culture to get a road win. Some don't. Looking at you, Alabama. You're going to be in more of these one-score situations. And so it is really, really nice to feel like your team, just like you're describing there, is prepared for those situations and to this point has even thrived in most of those situations. Compliments especially to Chef DeRuyter for what he was cooking up in the kitchen, because you were pressuring the QB immediately out of the gate. And you want to talk about a sight for sore eyes. I mean, we've talked about it over and over, how you're kind of getting close, but you're not leaving with cigars. You're not getting home often enough. And you get home very early on, and you continued to batter the quarterback. I mean, you were smacking this guy around, and everybody was taking a turn getting a lick. We saw Dingle in there. We saw everybody seemingly taking a turn getting a lick on the QB, which I love to see. And I really just felt like you were the most violent team on the field, which I didn't even know was still allowed. But Texas Tech somehow, some way, found a way to be that team. And it wasn't just hits on the quarterback, Chris. I thought a lot of your tackles were very physical. I mean, I don't know kind of where that came from, because I hadn't really viewed the defense that way to this point in the season. And maybe that's just on me missing some things, but Vinny Scurry had to love watching that one because I felt like you were the most violent team and the most violent team won.
Yeah, it was just kind of a tone that you set early and carried it through. And as the game went on, especially late, okay, you're running out of gas, or you've just been out on the field for what feels like an eternity. And how long can you keep this up? And they just kept. I mean, I think Terrell Tillman was credited with a sack. People are going to be like, "Who's Terrell Tillman?" You come into this thing, no Isaac Smith, no Amir Washington. We already know that Dylan Spencer and Joe Adedire are out for the year. You're going to start this game with Esters and Dyson at the outside linebacker spots, who had both missed significant time already this year. You've got Rigsby backing them up. You've got Tillman backing them up. You've got Ansel Nador backing them up. And but Tim utilized all his pieces. But it's one thing to go in to a game and have a plan and then just, go, man, the plan would have worked if we'd executed it, but his kids did for the most part. And yeah, it took a village. And Lux was having to rotate in, and he missed some time. Devin Cromwell, who was starting for Chapman Lewis, was not there, your best safety. And Cromwell had to leave and go to the locker room. And so you got Jordan Sanford with his brace on his thumb that was in there. I mean, it's just like you needed a little bit of everything to get it done against. I mean, there was a lot of NFL scouts there looking at Teteroa McMillan, and understandably so. He's a problem, especially when he gets the ball on the run and can stop like he can. And he's when he gets it in the open field, he's a big running back is what he is. And it's a scary matchup, but you held him in check just enough. And I thought on some of the 50-50 balls that they threw up, you defended it well. There wasn't a lot of I thought the officiating crew let it get kind of physical, and that worked for you and against you maybe on occasion. But I thought that played well into what you were trying to do. But I mean, like Baskerville's interception at the end of the half to set you up for what would be that field goal that you would kick going into the locker room was an unbelievable play. The tipped pass, Fafita's not the biggest guy. You got your hand up on that one, and then it's just the turnovers. I mean, that's and we're talking defense here, but Barron missed some things. I thought he hit some things, and he took some hits that I hated to see. But he continues to play mistake-free football. And there was almost a few. I mean, they were sitting on a few routes, and they all. But he continued to take care of it. And I think that because you're seeing the way this is playing out. It's these turnovers. It's one play here or there. And your field goal kickers. I mean, Gino. I will say this. I thought it was very interesting. Yes, we have a kicking competition, and yes, knock on wood. Well, I just won't say it, but you've been pretty good overall as a field goal kicking unit. Okay, so I'll just leave it there. Go look it up. I don't want to jinx anything, but with not a lot of time left in this game and kicking the go ahead, it technically would have been Reese's turn. Gino Garcia went out there.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, this makes sense. He's done this before and all that, but and their kid is really good too on the field, but he had the miss, and he was counting. That kid made a 75-yarder in pregame. They
showed that on TV.
Yeah, he said it during the week, like when asked, "I'm good from 65." I don't know if coach will ever call that, but I feel good from 65. So when you take that 2-point lead, I'm like, oh, and he had just missed one. I'm like, I don't like this situation at all. But it all ended up the right way, man. Yeah, the end of the first half and the end of the game kind of summed up. You take that 4 to 5 minutes of actual game time, and that's you could have just skipped to the end and watched those, and that's how Texas Tech won this thing.
Part of that middle eight you're describing there, which
Yep.
is always so important and what Joey McGuire touches on many, many times. Well, shout out to the kicker. He'll always have that pregame 75-yarder or whatever, I guess, to hang his hat on. So could be very, very proud of that off a tee. I wanted to mention two more names to you defensively. You already mentioned one of them. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app where you're going to find the best last-minute deals, and I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. Of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. I wanted to mention two more names to you defensively. You already mentioned one of them, but Mo Horn and Devin Cromwell, I thought had great games as well. Mo Horn has turned into a really good football player for you. Another guy that's really physical, maybe not physically imposing from a measurable standpoint, but the dude is not afraid of contact. And Devin Cromwell, where'd you come from? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a cornerback who's forced into safety action, and maybe there's been some crossover in practice, but I was kind of anticipating, okay, Lewis not out there. I guess I'm thinking Sanford, but then it's Devin Cromwell out of nowhere, and he's your third leading tackler on the night. Shout out to Lux as well, who right out of the gates, almost huge pass breakup on one of those first 50-50 balls with McMillan, really well defended there. But Mo Horn and Devin Cromwell, man, can't applaud them enough for their effort as well.
And that's what that's what Tim had told. This is something we talked about quite a bit on the broadcast, and like we had some interviews that we had done in the early in the week with some of the defensive players about, okay, how do you play this big kid, or what do you need to do in general? And all the DB talk was, be very physical. Be physical with him. Don't let him get to where you want to go. You got to knock him off his routes. And again, as you mentioned, Mo Horn, not the biggest guy. Macho Stevenson, not the biggest guy. Devin Cromwell, not the biggest guy. I mean, Teteroa McMillan, he looks the part. He's 6'4". He's somewhat imposing, but you kept punching and fighting and being physical, and it seemed to work for sure. And I think, you credit some of these new pieces that this is development, and I think Devin is somebody that. He's trained at safety. He's trained at corner. He's just kind of a DB, gets pressed into duty here. And you weren't sure where he would settle in at. But as long as Chapman Lewis could be out, what you hope that's not too long, but you're going to need him to fill some void at safety. And I thought he did a pretty good job because he's learning. This is a kid from Canada that when he got here, I think I've told this story before, but he's like, wait, so the receiver doesn't get a running start before the snap, like in the CFL? They're like, no, man. Well, I can do this, but at free safety, he gets a chance to kind of play center field a little bit and use some of that speed, and not get caught up with like a double move and this and that. And it's just about his responsibilities. But I thought he played well. And keep in mind, he had to come out, had to go to the locker room because he cramped up and. All the stuff, but you just kept sending people out there, and they kept executing what Tim had drawn up.
By the way, message to the safeties: no more going to the locker room. You guys got to cut that out. That's really becoming a problem the last couple of weeks. On the offensive side of things, Chris, obviously Texas Tech doing what needs to be done to play their part offensively in a win. Ain't nothing wrong with hanging your hat on a defense on the road in the Big 12 to get a conference win. So again, I'm just not a style points guy. I could not care any less what it looks like. I don't play fantasy. I don't play video games. I don't care about these things. Thought Baron Morton did his part. Caleb Douglas, biggest night as a Red Raider. Could have been even bigger. It's really easy to say boy, you got to make that catch in the end zone from my couch or from the patio. So I'm not going to say that, but almost had his hands on the dagger there in the back of the end zone, but nonetheless was still the most productive pass catcher for the Red Raiders. We saw Micah Hudson with the big grab early in the game, a really nice grab as he had to stretch out for that one and bring it in to set up a touchdown. And this is on a night where you could not really ever get Josh Kelly going. And if you would have told me going into this one, hey, Kelly's going to wind up with 27 yards on 5 catches, he's going to limp off the field at one point as well, I'm thinking, big trouble. But you had some other guys step up and fill that role. Man, I was really happy for Caleb Douglas to see him make some of the big plays that he did.
Yeah, Josh Kelly is one of many, many guys that's going to look at this bye week and give it a big hug. Because, I mean, that's why I think he wasn't your punt returner last night. I think he's got, he was on the injury report a couple of weeks ago. I think he's just been kind of pushing through and playing through. And yeah, you need some rest there. But Caleb Douglas, the deep threat, you're right. And some may talk about the one that, it would have been a semi-tough catch, but he had his hands on it. I think he wishes he had caught it for sure. But yeah, a couple of those shots down the sideline, because that's what Arizona does. They play with that one high safety look, and that's, and they put their corners on an island, and Takario Davis, one of the best ones in the country, they just trust those guys. And if, there's shots to be had, and you took a few of them at some points when you're like, what are they doing? Oh, that's a great call. Good, but I thought Douglas was really good, just like the one to Micah Hudson was really good. But that's kind of, we'll remember those plays, not the throws that or the plays that you didn't make. It's those those few chunk plays or explosives that you hit that set you up to score field goals, touchdowns, whatever it was. And that's kind of the difference, because it was just enough. If you take any one of those away, I don't know if we get the same result. But yeah, Caleb on a couple of deep shots and Micah on the one, and yeah, they're both playing that Z position. And I think Caleb Douglas is kind of ailing a bit too. So this bye week just comes at a perfect time.
Yeah, no doubt. You already mentioned one of the specialists in Gino, and love to see that ice still flowing in his veins. I thought Jack Burgess had a great night, and I could not have been any more damn proud. I'm going to get emotional talking about this. You make the decision to punt with 9 minutes left in the game, which was 1,000% the right call. Let your defense play freaking defense, and don't put them in a short field and ask them to do it. And I know there are probably fans out there that were wanting the opposite of that. I was not. I wanted the punt. You're on your own 34-yard line, I think. 9 minutes to roll. And yeah, it gets a little tense as the clock is ticking and ticking and ticking and ticking. But what happens? You find a way to make a play. I thought Burgess had a pretty good night individually, but that little sequence obviously was one of the more interesting ones as it relates to the book. Where are you? What are you going to tell us? Who cares? Because we already know the answer. You freaking punt in that situation. And I'm glad that was the call that was made. And you gave your defense an opportunity to go to make a play for you, get a stop, do whatever needs to happen to get the ball back where it needs to be. And thankfully we saw that happen. That was one of those moments that I really thought, all right, here's what could be a game-defining call and a game-defining moment. I thought they made the right call. And, of course, I'm using every bit of hindsight to say that as well. But in the moment, with the buddies I was watching it with, what are we doing here? I'm saying punt, 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 punt. And we roll that way. And your defense rewarded you.
Yeah, I think Joey is said this is a feel thing right now. We're not really good on fourth down. Your offense wasn't playing very good at all at the time. Couldn't really do anything. And I credit Joey there for kind of amending or altering kind of what his thought process, because I think there was a time when it was just like, no, this is what we're doing, and this is what we believe in, and here we go. And we'll let the results, fall with whatever happens with it. But that was and obviously it all worked out. So we would agree with the call. Because the flip side is, I'm a little nervous at the time too, punting, because it's like, I even said on the broadcast, guys, you can't keep sending your defense out there and expect them to hold up. Because and keep in mind, I'm there. I'm watching guys walk by me to the locker room. I'm watching guys get on the bicycle. I'm watching the trainers. talking to various people, trying to just like, hey, are you okay? And it's like, dude, I mean, do you have anybody left? And that part was making me nervous because, I mean, you knew how explosive some of their playmakers are. And that's what you keep giving them chances. And sooner or later, somebody's going to bust one on you, whether it was one of those running backs or McMillan breaking a tackle and away he goes. But yeah, it all worked out. And I thought, at the time, if you're 10 or 15 yards further upfield, maybe you feel differently if you're Joey, but not at that point. And I think he made the decision to punt, and Jack did a really good job all night. And I just can't speak enough about it. It took all phases in this one, kind of like these other games. That's just kind of what it's looked like. Nobody's carrying the water here. They've all got a bit of the load and responsibility or some equity in these wins in the last in these conference wins, anyways.
Yeah, that decision took you from your own 34 to their 30. Obviously, they put together a little bit of a drive, but then once again, Texas Tech gets them in a 3rd and 8, and their average distance needed on 3rd down was 7.1 yards, which says a lot about what you were doing defensively. They don't pick it up, and then we see a field goal, no good. So that was great to see. And the defense, I certainly agree. You're wondering how many more times can we call on them, but would 1,000% rather call on them on the other end of the field as opposed to their backs to the goal line. Sort of deviating from this very football-specific script for just a moment before we get out of here, Chris. I thought it was a real Pac-12 showing from Arizona on a Saturday. Number one, our cheerleader hurt one of your guys. What the hell? The cheerleader gets up, pumping up the crowd, waving the megaphone, flexing like the Hulk, and the football player goes limping off. So I don't know if he's made for that. Maybe the women's basketball program is looking for some help. Second, I'm curious to see what you thought about the on-the-ground vibe, because the crowd looked pathetic on television, and I was just sitting here thinking, boy, I can't believe the Pac-12 couldn't survive. And one of our Matador Mob insiders was texting at that point in time, oh, you must not remember the Pac-12 motto, it absolutely doesn't mean out here. That's sort of the antithesis to what you find in the Southeast. I mean, I think 45,000 was the reported total, and we always know those are even a little inflated as far as tickets sold versus butts and seats. It looked pitiful for a team coming off of a top 10 road win, and I just took it as a reminder that from a Texas Tech standpoint, you got to understand you got a great fan base, because there's been very little rewarding of the fan base given the on-the-field results for quite some time, but we keep showing up. So on TV, that's the vibe I got. Wondering what your experience was like there with boots on the ground.
I hope, and it's impossible for some people to understand this if you can't get to any of these road games. But I talked to, there was some people at the game this morning after the game that I talked to that are, parents of players and just, whatever. And I'm like, man, you just don't understand how nice your stadium is, how nice your city is, how nice your fan base is, or mean, maybe, or hostile. Okay. Yeah. How great your game day environment and atmosphere is until you go see it elsewhere. And when you compare it, it doesn't compare. Their in-game stuff, the sound system, the juice of the environment. They're a lot of empty seats. I mean, not a ton, but it wasn't anywhere near full. And I mean, we were talking about that on the broadcast. It's like, man, it's a Saturday night. You're coming off of a win in Salt Lake City, which you hadn't done in 10 years or whatever, and not everybody shows up. Don't really get that, but that's their problem. So the environment got a little testy, I think, when it just wasn't going well, and they finally took a 19-18 lead, and it started to get loud. But it was never. That was more of the players on the other side that were, it wasn't the environment. It got louder, but it wasn't far from intimidating. And I think that's it's much harder to play when it's rolling in Ames, Manhattan, Morgantown, Stillwater, places like that I've seen there, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a problem. Right. This was not that. And I thought I'll say this too. One of your new additions, I thought BYU was a really tough place to play. That environment was great and intimidating, and I think their home record speaks to that. But this Arizona deal was not that. No.
Any analysis on the cheerleader collision?
Well,
were you anywhere near that? I forgot what side of the field that was even on.
It was on Tech sideline. Yes, I was, and those collisions when somebody's not looking are really scary sometimes.
Yeah.
Because people can get seriously hurt. Like, all kidding aside.
Oh yeah.
And he got hit, behind, and I guess in this way, it was maybe good that he didn't even see it coming, because it just hit him low enough to where he kind of just rolled under, because that could have been a serious knee injury there. But yeah, he got up and he's like, yeah, but he's like, hey dude, are you all right? And
he's checking on the guy.
And the Arizona receiver is like limping off, and like
the dude in pads with a helmet he was having to check on.
He's got his megaphone, no pity for the kitty. Yeah, I don't know what he was yelling, but yeah, that kind of summed it up, didn't it?
I said at that time, that's going to inspire us to go take this game. I'm not so sure it didn't.
And Debbie McGuire even tweeted this cheerleader after the game, and I think she said that he's the brand. I'm like,
that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, yeah, that was
hardest working, most competitive cheerleader in the country. Man, we checked a lot of boxes. We don't have to dive into it, but we complimentary footballed. You saw takeaways turned into points. I really thought a lot of the things we've been asking for, we saw on display, and maybe what we are asking for, even though from an entertainment value standpoint, I don't like it. A bye week is now coming up, and I know we'll talk on the next episode about getting on the mend. So appreciate your time for this reaction episode, Chris. Welcome back to the LBK, and we'll see you for the next one.
Yeah, you're complimentary. One last thing, you score 18 points off of those 3 turnovers, and you made it hurt, and that's the way it's supposed to go. That's complimentary football. So thoroughly enjoyed it. An off week has never looked so good. I'm going to thoroughly enjoy the next couple of weeks, because nothing bad can happen to you in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, appreciate it. For those of you that were in Tucson, great to see you. Thanks for listening to these shows. Thanks for making this little show of ours. I saw people in restaurants on Friday night and Saturday morning in Tucson that came up to me and listen all the time. One lives in Abilene, and another one I think lives in Kansas. They were there for the game and both sought me out and said, man, listen to you and Cowan every day. So we certainly appreciate it. Guns up to you all, guns up to everybody out there. Enjoy it, get some sleep. I know I will. And we'll come back and do it again tomorrow.
Heck yeah. Thanks for being part of the LOTT family. If you want to get even a little closer to these kinfolk, become a Matador Mob insider. Check the show notes for the link. You can try on a free 14-day trial. And as I was texting with all the mobsters throughout the game on Saturday night, I kind of thought as we got into the late night hours, the responses may start to dip off. Absolutely not. We were cooking white hot throughout the entirety of the ball game, running into the 2:00 hour. And as you say there, 18 points off those turnovers. I'm just looking. That's now 68 points so far off of turnovers this season. That is 60 in the past 4 weeks alone off of those takeaways, something that we are looking to see continue on the other side of the open week. All right, appreciate all you guys again for being out there. Thanks especially to those everydayers. Make sure you get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.